Recording.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Land Use Landmark and Planning Committee at CB11. My name is Jason Villanueva and I am the chair of the committee. The meeting is being called at 4:35 p.m. and tonight we're joined by Adrian Estate, the staff liaison to our committee. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business, wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. For those on Zoom, click the participants icon and you will find the raise hand function there. If you have technical difficulty, click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to be speak. So basically, just everybody direct your questions, concerns, comments to the chair. The chat should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record when recognized. Please keep your questions and comments brief and on topic to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. We will now take the attendance by roll call.
Many members, when I call your name, please answer present. Then Bria,
Present.
Crouch, present. Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Arnie Foster Hernandez, Pascal Hanum,
Present.
Jewel Jones,
Present.
Jessica Morris,
Present.
Nilsa Rama,
Present.
Beverly Pavone, Derek Stampone, present. Benny Torres,
Present.
Jason Villanueva,
Present.
Candy Vivas Vasquez.
Actually, we have quorum. Adoption of the agenda. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you wish to object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Adoption of the meeting minutes. The minutes from our last meeting were distributed to committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we'll adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand to be recognized.
Jason, it's the adoption, it's approval for November, December, and January.
Correct.
Are you guys have questions or comments about your minutes? Yeah, there's a correction that needs to be made in last month's minutes. I was excused and not absent.
Okay, we'll make that adjustment.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Motion. Seeing no objections, the minutes from our last meeting are adopted with the minor modification of adjusting attendance. The minutes from tonight's meeting are being taken by myself and Mr. Crouch. Announcements. The announcements,
George James has announced.
Mr. James.
Yes, just to let you all know that the Mayor's Charter Review Commission has started. It had its second meeting yesterday. It will continue to have meetings throughout the months of this month, March and April. The Manhattan meeting will be at the end of April. I'm bringing it up here because it is very clear that the intention of this review commission is to make changes to the charter that will change ULURP and the ULURP process. It will, from the discussion from the panelists that were invited to speak, there was a lot of complaint over ULURP as an impediment to housing production in New York City, and that there needed to be ways of changing ULURP so that it would not be the impediment that many of the people saw. That would include things like, or at least some examples that were thrown out, which, you know, haven't been adopted, but these are being talked about. removing some elements from ULURP so that it wouldn't no longer be ULURP actions and so wouldn't come before you, relatively smaller things. Um, there's the idea of changing, if there's changes done to NYCHA campuses, they would either go through a streamlined or a non-ULURP process to changes to NYCHA campuses. The idea there is that the residents matter more than the neighboring community in terms of those decisions. But the major complaints seem to be about the concept of member deference and changing the role of city council in the land use process. And the idea is that, you go through ULURP and then, at the very end of the process, the council member makes changes based upon a local issue. And there seems to be a lot of desire to change how that process works. There is opportunity for you all to be involved in this. The Manhattan meeting is at the end of April, April 24th, I believe. But there is, a lot of information out there. You could submit written testimony, you could submit spoken testimony. And that's all I have for you. Oh, one last thing. There is a competing charter review commission going on that was formed by Adrian Adams. So the speakers, kind of competing charter review commission, they are not as far along. They haven't had any meetings. They're just staffing up. There's really not much to say to it other than it seems to have been set up in competition or contrary to or in response to the mayor's charter review commission.
Yeah, Ken.
Thank you. George, is this review commission, is this born out of the recent voter initiative, the ballot initiative, in spokesman of this initiative, or was that a separate track?
No, it's different. So this will end in a ballot initiative at some point. So if the commission comes up with recommendations of changes to the charter, they will go on the ballot at some point. But this is unrelated to that previous ballot initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, George. No, Vinny.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, George, for that. So on that mayor's charter review commission, George, the removal, some of those impediments, right, you mentioned, the removal of some of the elements in the current ULIP process. Do you know which ones may be suggested for this, and if so, what kind of impact that will be versus the current process?
Right. Let me just be very clear, is that the Charter Commission itself hasn't said anything, meaning it's hearing testimony from experts that they've invited, right? And so these people that they've invited to come speak have said certain things. And so like on this like for example, they make minor actions faster and less resource intensive by essentially excluding them from ULURP. It doesn't say, or this particular person who is testifying doesn't say what those minor actions are, but they were using examples like, oh, a extension of a commercial overlay or something like that. It's a zoning change, and it's a small zoning change, and they're saying that these small zoning changes shouldn't have the same level of attention in the process that a larger zoning change does. But I don't have any more specifics than that, Vinny.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, George. Any other announcements? Informational updates? Excellent, we can see with our agenda. Presentations and discussions, informational presentation, land use application 250-147 ZRM, 250-148 GMM, 250-149 PPM, 250-150 PQM, Carmen Waters Apartments, Senior Housing, HPD, Ascendant Neighborhood Development Corporation, Excellent Projects, An urban builder collaborative proposed the acquisition of subsequent disposition of property by the city, a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to facilitate the development of a 28-story, 210-unit, income restricted housing development with community facility space for seniors at 100 East 111th Street. Are the presenters?
Yes.
Well, we can turn it over.
Great, should we go up to the front?
Yeah, the slideshow?
Yes. Should,
There you go.
I also brought some physical copies if anybody wants to take a look.
Thank
That's
you.
around 6 of them.
Because this is not a process for the public, this is a new application within the district. The board takes 60 days from the initiation of review, so that way we can have public comment, committee, cross-committee collaboration, and or constituent involvement as it relates to a project. So those in the public, anybody has any questions or concerns, you want to contact me or email the board. Thank you.
Allowed to ask, speak. There you go. Is that good? Okay, great. Good evening. Thanks for having us back here at Community Board 11 of the Land Use Committee. I think we were here virtually a couple months ago, a month ago, for this project. So happy to be back now officially in Wheeler. My name is James Chikov. I'm the senior planner in the Manhattan planning team at HPD, joined by my director, Melissa Hahn, and new deputy director, Joy Reeser. They'll be here as well to answer any questions, and folks from the development team will introduce themselves throughout the presentation. So we're excited to be here as part of Euler. This is our first Euler meeting, the official public hearing being next 2 weeks from now at the full board meeting. So let's jump in. Go through a quick technical information about the development site and the proposed land use actions, and then I'll pass it over to the development team to discuss the project team, the product overview, affordability and unit mix, as well as the programs and local hiring. So to begin with that technical background, the development site will be located on an underutilized parking lot at the existing Casita Park housing for the elderly at East 110 East 111th Street. Casita Park is currently owned by Ascendant Neighborhood Development. The applicant team for this ULURP comprises HPD, Ascendant Neighborhood Development, Xylem Projects, and the Urban Builders Collaborative, which is the developer arm of Latier Construction Corp. And the development team is made up of those organizations without HPD. The ULURP was certified on Monday, February 3rd, and the proposed project will be a 28-story new residential building with approximately 210 affordable senior housing units that will be developed under HPD's Senior Affordable Rental Apartments Program, known as SARA. And so just an aerial view here of the site for more context. The current tax and zoning lot encompasses the entirety of lot 1, which is highlighted in blue. The development site is highlighted in red and is using development rights from the entire zoning lot to achieve its height and floor area. And so the project will be located on the corner of Park Avenue and East 110th Street, just north of the NYCHA Clinton houses. And so to facilitate the proposed project, the applicant team proposes the following land use actions. HPD is proposing to reacquire previously city-owned property on block 1638, part of lot 1, which is the development site. The entirety of lot 1 was conveyed to Ascendant through a UDAP in 2000 for the development of Casita Park. And then so after the acquisition, the subsequent disposition of the development site to the developer. Ascendant, Xylem Projects, and Urban Builders Collaborative propose to rezone the area and highlighted and dotted black to an R9-1 district and also map an MIH area in the project area. So now I'll turn it over to the development team to talk more about that.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Rillo. I'm the executive director of the Neighborhood Development Corporation. Really happy to be here this evening to present this project. I'm joined by Matthias Helpin, who is joins me from Ascendant, and Matt Gross, who is here representing Urban Builders Collaborative, and bringing regrets from Nena Lynch, who is our partner from Xylem Projects. Unfortunately, she had a family conflict this evening and wasn't able to be here. But she was here in December, I believe, when you had the pre-ULURP briefing on this project. You're pretty familiar with it. You're pretty familiar with the team. I don't want to take too much time going through who we all are, but Ascendant, for anyone who's new or listening in from home, Ascendant is a nonprofit organization based here in East Harlem. We've been working here, it's actually wrong, it's 37 years because it's 2025 now. We've been here since 1988. And have a portfolio of almost 700 affordable rental apartments in the neighborhood now, and are working on 4 new construction projects with our partners at HPD and other various joint venture partners. And this is the 4th and final for now ULURP that we've brought to you since 2021 for all these projects, and happy to finally be in this process. And Xylem and UVC, their information is up here, also both based in Harlem and part of the development team for this project. So a little bit about Carmen. Many of you who are on Community Board 11 or have been in the neighborhood for any period of time, may have known or worked with Carmen, served with her on Community Board 11, or come into contact with her in some other way in your lives in the neighborhood. She was quite well known and revered in the neighborhood. In addition to being a member of Community Board 11 and an activist for any number of amazing causes in the community. People may not know that she was also the board chair for Ascendant Neighborhood Development for many, many years, and actually was the board chair when I started as the executive director at Ascendant 12.5 years ago. Sadly, we only overlapped for 6 months, and I started in July of 2012, and she passed away from cancer in December of that year. But was quite a force of nature and was able to accomplish so many things in the neighborhood across a whole number of different areas. But one of many areas that she focused on, and her involvement with our organization was really driven by her desire to see the revitalization of the neighborhood in the wake of disinvestment and the loss of housing stock, and wanting to be involved in an organization that was working to rebuild housing and bring people back to the neighborhood. And also an organization that has focused a lot of its efforts on senior housing. In particular, about 1/3 of our existing portfolio is senior housing, including the Casita Park Apartments, which is the site where the Carmen project is proposed. After Carmen passed, Ascendant, we together with our board decided that we wanted to do something to honor Carmen's memory, and it has taken a lot longer than we had hoped. But we are happy to be at this point to have this amazing project before you for consideration and naming it in her honor. And as has been noted previously, and we'll see as we go through the presentation, one of the components of the project is some significant public art. There are opportunities on the whole eastern facade of the building, as well as at ground level, where we plan to have public art, and some of that will kind of be focused on honoring Carmen's legacy in the neighborhood. So the project itself, as James mentioned, is a 28-story building with 210 apartments, including and additionally 1 superintendent's unit. There will be amenity spaces for the residents, both indoors at various floors in the building and outdoors. The outdoor courtyard will be a shared amenity between residents of the new building and residents of the existing Casita Park Apartments. And at the ground floor and second floor of the new building, we are setting aside over 7,000 square feet of community facility space for a new senior center that will be operated by Sage. The building meets very stringent standards for sustainability and resiliency, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Just to quickly run through some of the features of the building. This slide shows you a view of the 6th floor. So there's a 5-story base of the building, and the building sets back before the tower proceeds up to the 28th floor. So at this floor, we're taking advantage of the setback to create some outdoor landscape space that residents will be able to access. And we have concentrated a lot of the amenity spaces that are going to be accessible for residents of the building on this floor, including exercise space, a library, community rooms, and laundry rooms. But other spaces will be spaced out throughout the building so that residents don't have to go all the way down from the higher floors to have spaces where they can meet and interact and get outside of their apartments. I should also mention, just as we speak about resiliency, the 6th floor also serves as a space of refuge in the case of a weather event, flooding, or something that might cause disruption of services. And so, you know, this all of the electricity for this space will be run off our emergency generator so that residents will have a place to come to where they'll be able to access space in the case of a future weather event or emergency. So the building itself is being financed through HPD's SARA program, the Senior Affordable Rental Apartments program. All the apartments are reserved for people age 62 and older. The income restriction is for the program is capped at 50% of AMI. And as a senior building, all the apartments are either studios or 1-bedrooms. And so you see the matrix of the units here. So there will be a set aside for households, formerly homeless households referred from the Department of Homeless Services. All residents of the building will be receiving project-based vouchers. So no residents, no households will be paying more than 30% of their income toward rent, with the remainder covered by the voucher. So 30% of the units are formerly homeless set aside, and the remaining 70% are at the maximum 50% AMI max of allowed on this program. So again, the lower 2 floors of the building incorporate community facility space that will be operated by Sage, which is one of the leading providers, probably the leading provider of senior services for the LGBTQIA+ community in New York City and actually around the country. They currently operate a smaller senior center further north of here in Harlem. But this will be a major newly built facility for them, which will allow them to expand their services and bring their services here to East Harlem. And they will be providing services to the broader community through the community facility space on the lower 2 floors of the building, which will be publicly accessible senior center, as well as providing services within the building to residents as part of the programming of the building. Moving along, so I already referenced we're really striving to achieve significant sustainability, energy efficiency, and resiliency with this building. We're building to the very stringent resiliency standards that HPD has established for buildings. Even though we are far inland from the river, because of the geology of East Harlem, this site is actually within flood zone, potential future flood zone, and so we're building to very stringent resiliency standards. The ground floor is elevated. Our mechanical equipment is not going to be in the basement; it'll be on higher floors in the building to ensure that in the event of future flooding, we're able to continue to maintain services to residents in the building. We're going to be seeking passive house certification, so it'll be a very energy efficient building. We're incorporating solar panels on the roof and in the facade. So the building received an award of funding and a special recognition for design from NYSERDA through its round 4 of the Buildings of Excellence program. So we're really excited to bring a project that is very cutting edge in terms of its sustainability and resiliency to the community. So our development partner, Urban Builders Collaborative, is also our general contractor through Latier Construction. So they will be in charge of building the building. They are based here in the community. Their office, their headquarters is 3 blocks east of this site. So it's very much in their backyard. And obviously have done a lot of other projects. They are actually Ascendant's contractor on 2 other projects that the community board has reviewed and approved through Euler, one of which is now finally in construction, the Las Raíces project. And the Beacon project, which you saw in Euler last year, which will hopefully be starting construction maybe by the end of this year. So, you know, they're doing a lot in the neighborhood and they are, you know, very familiar with, you know, all of the various programs and requirements, and our goal is to achieve maximum participation in hiring and contracting with locally based firms and locally based workers. So that's a big commitment from our team, and you know, Matt is here to answer any more specific questions about that. But just to wrap up, that's the project, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions first from the members of the committee, and then we'll transition to the public. Any questions from the members? I will start with Beverly, then Jessica, and then Pascal. Then we'll go to.
Thanks again for the presentation. Each time we do something like the open that information, so I appreciate that. That they're coming, you know, regular basis, these process. My question is regarding the recent, the geothermal system. I'm very much interested in that because that would help out with carbon, you know, help reduce that and everything like that. So, there was 3 types of geothermal systems. Which one are y'all going to use?
So I'm not sure what 3
Okay.
were actually listed.
Okay. The 3 that they had was, standing column well, a closed loop, and an open loop.
Yeah, so we are pursuing a closed loop system for the geothermal. And we can follow up with more. We're in the midst of that design right now. So we can really we can do a whole separate presentation on the geothermal. I know Jason had previously asked about some projects that have already been done geothermal in the city. So I have a couple of those examples, and I can talk to them, but I can come with more information specific to that, or just follow up with some one-page summary on it or something, give a memo kind of on the geothermal.
Is, one of the projects is, Hunts River.
I'm sorry. Could we speak up and
Oh, so
all people online can hear me well?
Is one of the projects.
I'm sorry, I'll help you all out. Direct your conversations, as stated in the beginning, to the chair,
Okay.
so they can hear you. Yeah, talk to me loudly so they can hear you.
So Chair, my question is, one of the projects I was gonna ask was Bronx River. And I heard that they use the geothermal project, so I would like to see the presentation for that. The next question was, I totally forgot it.
And that's okay, because at the end of the day, as always, formalize your Q&A, as I expect this from members.
Yeah.
The public is a little bit subjective, but members, put your questions and concerns to me in writing, so we got the development team formally responded, as we have done with every ULO to date since my chair.
Yes, so here's the other question. In regards to lot 1 and lot 8 and 66. Will that thermal system be working for all of those lots?
So the geothermal is mainly focused on providing the power for the new construction project. We believe that we will be able to utilize part of that system for the existing Casita Park building. Now, it's not gonna power the whole building, it's gonna be isolated. Potentially, right now, it looks like the domestic hot water system would be able to be powered through that geothermal. So the intention, though, is to try to combine as much of that power that we're getting from CBA to lend itself to Casita Park.
Thank you so very much, for that.
Excellent. Next.
Thank you for your presentation, Jessica. I don't have a question necessarily for the project, but last time when we spoke, we talked about this HPD project, programs with Sarah. And if there was any consideration about like grandparents raising grandchildren, so I know that doesn't apply to this project, but just curious if you all have had a chance to look into that.
Yeah, so we've been having discussions with the Sarah program and, I think. In general, right now, it's complicated, the economy of, there's a lot of seniors on. Wait lists, waiting to get into housing, whether they are, on unhoused currently or in. Like walk-up apartments, and so there's a little bit of a dilemma in terms of, we have to maximize the number of units to provide for seniors to be housed, but also considering these other components, and I think the Sarah program is. Especially one of those areas that is currently receiving a lot of feedback on how to proceed in the future, and so I think we're taking back what we're hearing publicly and.
Yeah, this,
We'll consider it for future projects, so I appreciate the continuous push for HPD.
And just, to continue the dialogue here a little bit, we have said on multiple occasions in other projects, just because a unit isn't, age restricted, doesn't mean it precludes seniors and their families from applying for that unit. So, we mentioned in other projects that we brought to you very recently that the teams have committed to, when they do marketing, to target senior populations, when they're marketing out, just letting them know that those units are online, so. It's a nice reminder, because we'll continue to be thinking about that when those future units are coming out, making sure that, those senior populations are very aware of being able to apply for units.
thank you for the follow-up and thank you for presenting the project again. It's a great project. Looking forward to it.
Let's go.
Sorry. Thank you for being here. Thank you for presenting. Just real quick, I would say that parking lot is utilized. The residents that from the existing building that park there. So just to confirm, there's no parking included in this project, correct? Okay, and then my second question is, the parking lot in that area serves as an alternate exit for people. Most of the time I see them going to the 110 station. So I know it will be a shared courtyard. Will the existing residents be able to exit the building and go through that courtyard?
Yeah, just like,
In the appendix or?
Yeah.
That, or,
well, I think that was.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me speak to that point. So the question was about residents of the existing Casita Park apartments often. So when I don't know if there's a way to point it out so that people at home can see, but basically at the corner of 111th Street and Park Avenue is where the main entrance to Casita Park is right now. But there is an entrance or an exit from that connects to the lobby. Right where the sort of L corner of the existing building is. And residents often walk out through the courtyard and then through the existing parking lot through the fence to get to 110th Street, which is the quicker way to get to the subway. And so we took that very much into account in designing the new building. There is definitely a desire line for people to want to go in that way and not have to walk all the way around either on Park or go up to 111th and walk down. So that's why we have the walkway that we're calling Salsa Way, which is at the very easternmost side of the ground floor. And so.
So it's online.
That's the ground thing. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is a better way to show it. So at the far right of the screen and the image is the entrance to the walkway that goes through and underneath the building into the courtyard. And so the main entrance, thank you. The main entrance to the Carmen Villegas apartments is just to the left of that. It's showing where the address is showing. But residents of Casita Park will be able to access their building through that entranceway. And so, it will not be open to the general public. There will be controlled access there. So you'll have to have a key fob. So to maintain security for residents of both buildings using the courtyard or using the passageway to get through to the rear door of Casita Park. I should have also mentioned that the Our goal is, and our plan is for a phase 2 project that will include rehabilitation and upgrades to the existing building. So part 1 of the project, the first phase is the new construction on the parking lot, but then a series of upgrades to the existing building, which opened in 2003, so it's 22 years old now. There's a series of resiliency, sustainability, energy efficiency upgrades, as well as just quality of life improvements, time to do more significant renovations. So that'll be coming along after we work through the new construction project. So.
Thank you. Just one last comment, not a question. A lot of new buildings go up and they don't really factor in waste management into their design. So I'm just asking for you to think about that as you build a building.
I'm happy to answer that because I think it's a really important point. And actually the city has become much more stringent about this. And our project has actually gone through a fairly new process where we, through with the development team and the design team, going through this required process now to develop a solid waste management, recycling management plan. So we had to do calculations about how much storage would be needed, what the pathways were, where the garbage would be placed. So that has been very much, on our minds. It's a very small footprint of a site. So we also wanted to make sure that, right now the existing trash from Casita Park comes out to the 110th Street side of the site.
Right.
So we're thinking holistically about how that will all be managed, where it will be stored on site, in which buildings, and where will it need to be placed. Obviously, the city's going through a much bigger process of rolling out literally and figuratively containers, so that we hopefully at some point won't have bags on the street the way we do now. But obviously, we want to make sure that it's contained and that it's a pleasant block to walk down. Obviously, the entrance to the residential is here, the entrance to the community facility is here. And if you're coming from the subway and heading up toward La Marqueta along Park Avenue to Urban Garden Center, Sendero Verde, or anything else, you're going to be walking right past this building. So we want to make sure that the sidewalks are neat.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, hello, everyone. My name is Arnie, and I'll turn this way because maybe I have to address everybody clear. So I have background in human resources facilities management, so my question is based on that perspective. The maintenance and personnel that you're gonna have for this facility, and I'm talking like long-term, is funded by what means? The residents rent, or you have already funding? Is it leverage from other properties? And the reason why I ask that is because over time, as we know, things are gonna go up. We're not pretty much faithful in these seniors having vouchers, however long that's gonna last, if they'll be able to sustain their rent. So we don't want the tenants to have to bear the financial burden of having to adjust and providing operational personnel costs for the upkeep of such a beautiful development. And I also mentioned that because I live in a complex that's going through that like right now. So I'm just want to know, what is the funding plan long-term to sustain the maintenance, operation, facilities management, and personnel that won't be a burden on the tenants?
The team could speak to that, but HB engages in a process to review a long-term financial plan. So it's within the realm of the regulatory agreement, which I believe it's been like 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a set point. Building will be affordable in perpetuity. You have to pick a date though for the tax credit structure. But in terms of the facilities and just operating costs in general, this is a project-based Section 8. So the entire building is covered by the vouchers. So folks who win this lottery to live here will pay 30% of whatever they make. Some may not make anything. So whatever they can contribute, they pay, and any gap is paid for by the voucher, and that voucher has escalations. And so HUD keeps up with the increases in insurance and real estate taxes and all of these things. Now, we have a real estate tax abatement here, but all these other costs, the insurance costs, the maintenance costs, they will all be covered. And so we go through rigorous underwriting by HPD upfront. And we look at it over the tax credit period is 15 years and then the extension for the regulatory agreement. So it's looked at over those years. I think insurance costs have gotten so crazy and run away. I mean, it's not even sustainable anymore. I mean, we have buildings that insurance have gone up 150% just in the past 5 years. So, and they're not Section 8. So those buildings have a lot of trouble now. So this building actually has that sort of crutch of the federal government here with the HUD vouchers. Now, obviously, there's a lot going on right now. But at a federal level, there's a lot going on, but I think to take some perspective, the new HUD secretary previously was in the initial Trump administration, created the Opportunity Zone program. It is actually understands the significance and importance of Section 8. We don't believe that's ever going away. That is a staple of HUD. It's a staple in not just New York City, but in all cities, especially for seniors. So the maintenance escalations are all covered under that contract of Section 8.
Nice.
So sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, it's all in the budget already, like considered, and then I will add that there are also HPD dollars going in. And the way that we structure our loans is to encourage the team by the end of the loan term to come back to us to go through preservation financing, which is kind of what Chris was referencing, where, you know, at the end of the useful life cycle of the building, when it needs major upgrades, the idea is to encourage them or maybe force them a little bit to come back to us to get the money to do those upgrades when the major upgrades are needed 40 years down the road. Sorry, I cut you off a little bit too, but.
And all of the budgets as well, you know, have factored into them contributions to reserve funds to cover things like, you know, in X number of years, we'll have to do window replacement, or in X number of years, we'll have to upgrade the HVAC system. So, you know, we do our best. I mean, no one has a crystal ball, and certainly, as Matt pointed out, there are things that have been beyond anyone's control, and projects that were underwritten even 5 years ago, you know, are certainly being revisited. But I think, you know, we all have the experience of working with HPD and the other housing agencies like HDC, HCR, HUD, who understand that this is a long-term ongoing relationship. I mean, we're long-term owners. Our goal is to have the building perform well and to not ever have it be a burden on any of the residents. That, you know, it's up to us to keep figuring that out. And if there's a problem, or if expenses are outpacing revenues, then, you know, there's a process to go back to HPD and HDC and HUD and say, look, you know, this is what we're facing. These expenses are escalating. This isn't how this is underwritten. We need to work this out. So it's always, you know, residents should never be impacted by that in a project like this.
And just one follow-up, a big operating cost that hits people from the capital side is the local law 11 work. We have no masonry here. So this is a panelized system. Panelized systems, EPIS systems really add significant value in the operating years once the building stabilized. Because I'll tell you, on our building, some of that local law 11 work, you know, based on how a block and plank building is designed, those bricks get a lot of compression and they start to crack. And, you know, it can add a significant cost in the future. So I think we've designed this with a, you know, long-term vision in mind, facade being one of them, of what are we gonna have in terms of capital repairs. The geothermal system, albeit more expensive upfront, long-term, should have significant savings from operating costs on the utilities and just operating maintenance. So all these sustainable features do cost a premium right now, just where technology is, but we really see long-term benefits. So appreciate it. It's such a sensitive issue for us as well on just the buildings. You know, we feel your pain.
Thank you. Any other questions? Before I go, anybody online, new? Beverly.
My question is regarding the vacancies. Once, we fill up the building, I know you're gonna go through, they're gonna go through Housing Connect. When vacancies come up for in the future, how would y'all put that back on Housing Connect? or, you know, they'll do in-house applications?
No, it'll be back on Housing Connect, so relistings, I forget there's like official name for it, but they're back, what is it?
Mini lottery.
Free rentals, yeah, they go back on Housing Connect, and sometimes they open even like a wait list, if you've seen those on Housing Connect, where you can peer up for free rentals, but that's really, we believe senior buildings, do that more often.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Before George, I'll jump in. So I just, more of a comment than question, is there any specific demographic or preference on the senior citizen group you're looking for this building? This is a loaded question.
Aside from age,
Excellent. So then my question is, to those that don't identify with, the organization that's taking the CFU, how are you gonna service those senior citizens?
Well, I mean, I'll take that. I mean, obviously, all of our projects are governed by fair housing laws, so, you know, anybody who qualifies based on income and age is more than welcome to live in the building, and, you know, we're happy to have them. You know, and Sage provides services to seniors, all seniors. You know, no one is excluded from Sage's programs. They have a particular focus in providing services to the LGBTQIA plus community. But they operate other senior centers all around the city, and no one is excluded based on how they identify their sexual orientation or gender identity. So, you know, they receive funding from the city for their senior centers, so they are, you know, under the same sort of obligation we are under in terms of making the housing available to anyone who wants it and qualifies. To, you know, if you want the services of a senior center and you live in the neighborhood or you live in the building, however you identify or don't identify, you're more than welcome to come down and use it. So
And they'll have.
there's no exclusion of anyone to.
Understood, not really the question, but more for the participants, right, of the program, that if they're there, I'm assuming Sage will redirect them, right, and why this is a predominantly Black and Hispanic community, I think we're all familiar with some of, you know, for lack of a better word, the cultural differences, and do they want, is there just an opportunity that they go to Sage? I can tell you, my grandmother went there, she'd ask, okay, where's the next place? And if they just have that type of direction, and I don't think it's an issue personally, but I've been called a few times already about it, especially with people knowing Carmen Villegas, and you made a good point in your presentation about how dying and fighting for the church. So, you know, there's a lot of discussion about gender identity, non-gender conformity, but then there's cultural practice, right? And this is you know,
Yeah, I mean,
you're calling it salsa way for a reason, right? Just so, you know, which is,
And
again,
for, you know, for this committee, we don't have someone from Sage here, but we will have a Sage representative at the full board hearing. And we'll be happy to let them know. I mean, they do operate a center in central Harlem. And, you know, they can come and provide, you know, information about who they serve there, and, you know, any issues that have come up around people feeling comfortable or not comfortable. But our perspective on this is we want everyone to feel comfortable coming to the building, living in the building, and coming to the center. And I hope that everybody, you know, who would want to use the center would feel comfortable coming, regardless of their religious beliefs or how they identify or don't identify in terms of sexual orientation or gender identity. You know, it's going to be an amazing center. The plans that Sage is putting together for the space are really quite extraordinary. It'll be newly built. It'll be in a great location, close to so much along 110th Street and up Park Avenue, with, you know, hopefully plans for La Marqueta moving forward, and the garden center, and you know, other facilities that are around here. So, you know, I mean, we're really hoping that everyone feels comfortable coming to it. But, you know, that's something that we'll talk to Sage about. That, you know, I mean, they certainly recognize that who feels comfortable coming to the center here may be different than who feels comfortable going to the main center that they operate in Chelsea. But they operate centers all around the city. They have one in the Bronx. They have one in Brooklyn, in Fort Greene. And so, you know, they can come with information about who they serve and, you know, how people self-identify who come and any issues they've had. But you know, in all of our conversations with them, they've never expressed any concerns about being, you know, not being able to serve the whole community and make the space feel welcoming to everybody. So.
Thank you. I think that answers it.
And just just to clarify also, in the building itself, separate from the first and second floor, there will be support offices for the set aside population, the formerly homeless households that'll, senior households that'll be coming in through an HRA senior services grant. And so that is separate and apart. And so, and what we've seen in our Sarah buildings is it's not only the 30% that use that, it's everybody in the building. And that's just general services, right? That's linkages, that's anything. So for the residents in the building, they're gonna have that resource in addition to the first and second floor.
Excellent. I think with those two responses and Melissa's response about family units, pretty much should address the concerns of the public that have been brought to my attention. Anyone else? Mr. James?
Thank you, Chair. My question is, it seemed like the rezoning area is about 155 feet deep going into the mid-block. Rezoning part of the R7B that was mapped in 2017 with the East Harlem rezoning. I just was wondering if you could talk about the decision on where to put the zoning district boundary and why you decided to draw it the way you did.
You want to take this?
Yeah, it's over there.
Actually, Chris, would you like to?
I'll take it, sure. Hi, George. So the shape of the existing property that Ascendant owns that is currently the site of the Casita Park Apartments is an irregular L-shaped site that extends further down 111th Street than it does on 110th Street. And this was a former NYPD parking lot before it was sold to us originally for the construction of Casita Park Apartments. And so, you know, when we originally approached HPD and city planning about the project, you know, we were mainly pursuing a rezoning that would affect our parcel and not affect any of the other private parcels that exist to the east of our site, either on 110th Street or 111th Street. That would have created a slightly irregular shape, but that would have just kept the rezoning area to our specific site. But the Department of City Planning, in their desire to have zoning districts that are sort of regular shapes, decided that if we were going to rezone all the way like 155 feet or whatever it is down the block on 111th Street to take in our full site, that we needed to have it go the same distance down 110th Street. So we end up taking in a portion of the adjacent parcel, which was previously redeveloped with a mid-rise affordable housing development that's not an Ascendant project, but is another project serving the neighborhood. So, you know, it's just a sliver of that parcel, and then it also takes in a sliver of a parcel that's owned by the bridge, I think, which operates section 811 affordable housing development on 111th Street, just east of Casita Park. So it was really at the direction of the Department of City Planning, the shape of the rezoning area.
And
Yep.
just because George asked this question, and I'm gonna jump in planner to planner. You might be wondering why it's 155 feet, George.
I am. I really am.
So this is also a DCP quirk where they like to have rezoning areas with a 0 or a 5 at the end. So they like us to, you
Yeah,
know.
I
round
do.
up.
Yep.
And so you see this little 6 foot here. It's just to make it with a 0 or a 5, we needed to do 155 feet front. And I'm so sorry if DCP folks are
We love
jumping in.
Chickens.
There's very specific reasons that they need that for the mapping, but that's just the explanation.
Well, it could have been 150 and it wouldn't have affected anything, right? Or am I missing something?
Wouldn't have been a rectangle.
No, if it would have been 150-foot rectangle as opposed to 155 feet. Or am I
There
wrong
might be-
about that?
Maybe we need to check in with DCP. I think there was a really technical reason that it needed to be 155 instead of 150.
I actually was gonna jump into that because you guys referenced another agency on multiple courts, if we could get that
Yeah, well,
formally, so that way.
yeah,
The committee, if it comes up at full board outside of just
Yeah.
James, that there's something that says DCP
Yeah.
directed you to do that.
We agreed to it with DCP, and there is a really technical reason it's slipping my mind because this conversation happened probably 3 years ago.
A while ago.
And I'm so sorry, it's slipping my mind and. George,
Thank you.
we will get that answer to you about why it's 155, not 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, George?
Thank you, Chair.
All right, see no other questions, comments? Nilsa's hands raised? Orama.
Yes, I have my hand raised. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify about Housing Connect. I am a housing ambassador, and so just to clarify, I'm expecting that there'll be so many applications for this project when it comes to fruition that you won't have to put this back on Housing Connect, because the history of Housing Connect is that you get thousands of applications for a limited number of units. Is that not so? Just because I want the clarification about the potential relisting back on Housing Connect. I've never seen that through, my experience.
You're because you're assuming that the wait lists would be so long that we would just draw from the wait list.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens, at least for my experience.
Yeah, that's typically correct. And so there's a lot of set asides because it NYCHA Section 8 vouchers. So they have some of their set asides, but you're right. I mean, they will go through the wait list first. And it's
right.
It's just some people fall off the wait list. People don't respond to that wait list. So that would be typically the first stop on the releasing. And then depending on what is available from that wait list, then they would go to the lottery. But
because you would also get referrals from the Department of Homeless Services for those set aside units as well. So I was just wondering when it was mentioned about the relisting, because it's never been my experience. So thank you so much.
I just have one more question on the rentals. If so it says that it has to be one person in the household 62 years of age, right, to be eligible for the program.
there's one clarification on that, is the set aside 30%. The age limit goes down to 55. And that opens up a bigger pool because that's somewhat of a difficult population, formerly homeless. They open that up for that.
So it's 55.
Just for the set.
And or 62.
Just for the set aside, 30% of the building is set aside for formerly homeless, just that set aside.
The other 70% is 62.
The others, exactly.
Because I just want to clarify,
Senior
there's no succession rights then.
That's a good question. I know that's come up.
If you're on the lease, you're saying, and you're, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we can get back.
people will, but people end up staying in there. I mean, who are in the family, yeah, it depends.
I mean, but it just should be legitimate, like it should be official.
That's a great question. We'll definitely ask. Bring that back.
I think that's bigger than this committee.
I mean, but it's information, because these people are gonna die eventually, and I'm sure they're gonna have their grandchildren and stuff.
That's a great point. So then the housing doesn't really get set up now for senior housing.
I
You
think
start using
what,
some of those units.
my understanding of how this works in our other Sarah buildings is that if the individual doesn't meet the age requirement, they're not eligible to stay in the unit.
So that works.
So that's where the regulatory agreement and that stuff comes into effect.
Right, so it can't be succession as long as they meet the criteria.
And it's also a voucher unit, right? So they have to have income requirements as well.
Right.
Yeah, but here the income requirements are, it's really based on the lottery, and then that's not, it doesn't start with income. Because we have folks in some of our Sarah buildings that have very little to no income. Right. So.
Right.
That's not a barrier.
So to clarify, if it's two people in the unit, and one is at the 62 plus, and the other person isn't, they don't appear on the list.
So they would, yeah, right,
You can only
the
sign the
signer, right,
lease
you can only sign the lease,
if you are-
if you meet the eligibility requirements, so the person who signs the lease would be 62 and up, or if they're in the set aside, they would be 55.
And so, but if both people they both sign the lease and then they would remain if the other.
If they were
person-
eligible
At the time of signing. What if they become eligible after the fact?
That's a great question, I don't wanna actually pretend even.
These are some.
Yeah, we're gonna play the game.
Yeah,
Get some responses internally, I think we need.
And please submit it to housing. We appreciate that. Thank you. There's a lot of great property, housing, tenant. Any other questions? Yes, Beverly.
Yes. Ownership. This new building is gonna be owned by Ascendant. Because you're getting the air rights from the other property to build it up higher.
So the new building will be owned by the joint venture team of Ascendant, Xylem, and Urban Builders Collaborative. The portion of the site where the Carmen building will be built is gonna be carved out from the Casita Park site. And our joint venture will jointly own the new building. Ascendant will continue to own Casita Park Apartments outright as the exclusive owner of that. The ownership of the existing building will not change. We're just carving out a piece of the site, the parking lot and the corner parcel to create the development site for the new project.
All right, because lot 66 is not owned by Ascendant, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
So
yeah,
that ownership stayed within that owner.
right, they're just
Okay.
affected by the rezoning. They're not affected in any way by the disposition or the acquisition action.
Oh, okay,
That's
that's part of
The Casablanca building is,
the same
this is
thing?
the only thing that affects it is this sort of land use action. It's just some lines going through its imaginary.
Right, right. That's the reason why I was asking regarding the agreement, a lot agreement that you have to do. And I hear that they supposed, the owners of those lots still be paying, being owners. That's why you're able to do. I just want some clarification on that.
And just in the future, eventually, the for-profit developers, Urban Builders Collaborative and Xylem, eventually, after the 15-year compliance period, the full ownership eventually goes back to Ascendant as the 100% owner after the initial regulatory period.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your presentation. Would you like to?
Jason,
go
you got a
first?
couple questions online.
Angel, what other questions do you have online? I'm sorry, I can't see from there.
Candy and Jessica Morris.
Okay, well, we'll go with Candy and then Jessica Morris.
I'm sorry, because Jessica had her hand up first, but okay. Thank you for recognizing me, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, guys. That was very nice. And I just want to say that, this project being named under Carmen Villegas, I don't know if I've said this before or I haven't, but I just want to say that you actually honoring the right person, to be honored to have this name, Carmen Villegas is a good colleague, and I just want to say thank you for recognizing her, in this way. She will be very proud that you're going to be using it towards the seniors, which she was very passionate about as well. So I hope that we can all support this project in spite of everything.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Candy. And I have a point of question, and I wanted to raise this while Ascendant, you are here, Chris and Derek, and also HPD is here representing. And I'm not sure, it may be relevant or maybe less relevant given the nature of the Section 8 and the senior Sarah classification for these 200 some odd apartments coming down the pipeline in East Harlem. It came up in housing that I became aware of a fintech startup, financial technology startup, focusing on renters in specific in order to find a way to get renters to be able to take advantage of paying their rent on time. Meaning they get a banked and in some cases an opportunity for cashback benefits for paying their rent on time. So it's my understanding that there would why it works in sort of market rate situations is kind of one consideration, but how it may work for affordable housing tenants who may need to get quote banked, right? Build good credit for paying their rent on time, whereas now there's really no return on that good action that happens every month, year on year for renters. So is that something that HPD or Ascendant would be willing to consider discussing in the future, whether it's appropriate for this project here, the Carmen Villegas Apartments, or for other projects that may be in the pipeline when it comes to leasing up and getting those systems in place to ensure that tenants are able to see some frame of financial empowerment or return on their on-time monthly payments to support their rent.
Well, I'll answer first. Thanks, Jessica, for raising that. I feel like I have heard of, I don't know if it's exactly the one that you're speaking of, but I feel like I've heard of initiatives to try to do that, to address the question that renters often have trouble building their credit records because they're not paying toward a mortgage or sort of the more traditional ways that people are able to build a credit history. I mean, I'm happy to learn more if you have information about it, and it's certainly something that we could look at. I mean, you know, obviously, like, you know, housing is the main focus of what we do, but if there's ways to leverage, you know, people's housing to further their capacity to build their credit and you know, build their wealth over time, even as they say renters, you know, that's something we'd certainly be willing to look at and explore.
Yeah, I think from the HPD perspective, this is definitely something new that I've also read, you know, some recent articles about. So we're happy to bring this back internally and continue the discussion with community board.
That's great. I think finding a way for the board to have a voice in this, especially in a neighborhood like East Harlem, where there are so many kind of vulnerable renters who are really looking to kind of build that potential for economic empowerment. And it's my understanding that the cashback aspect is used to cover healthcare costs or pay for utilities in a large percentage of the sample population. It's also my understanding that in it being fairly new startup, that there is no initial outlay cost to owners. So I'm not sure how long that would be good for, and if there would be a special arrangement for projects that include vouchers or public subsidy. But it sounds like you're both HPD and Ascendant are both willing to engage in a conversation going forward.
It just, Urban Builders Collaborative, we actually use that technology on a mixed income building, and it's really helpful. It definitely, they can provide a security deposit. They can provide a whole bunch of services that helps build the credit. So yeah, we're very much trying to utilize those types of services. It's just that, just like you said, it really does empower the renter. At CVA, it most likely won't. I don't believe that we would be using something like that specifically, also because it's a Section 8. I don't know that we fall into there, you know, that we would qualify necessarily, but we definitely should, you know, explore that here and appreciate the comment.
And I'll make point of it to our housing chair, who's usually on the committee, so that way the conversation continues at the housing committee.
Thank you. Where it started. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions online? Seeing no other hands raised, no other questions? Would you like to close, Chris, or are you good?
Well, I just want to thank the board and the committee for your involvement and partnership on getting the project to this point. It's been a long road to get here. It's been a longer road for us at Ascendant, having started thinking about this site very early on. After I came to Ascendant as an underutilized piece of property that was within our control, we didn't have to rely on anybody else to, designate us through an RFP. So, we've been looking at it for a long time. We've been talking to HPD and city planning about it for a long time. We're very lucky that we've been able to partner with the Builders Collaborative and Xylem projects on this. I'm very pleased and proud of the 4 projects that we've brought to the committee over the last several years with HPD. And I feel like a parent who, shouldn't say that they have a favorite among their children. But if I had to, and I was pressed, I would have to say that this project is personally meaningful. I wish that I had been able to work with Carmen longer. It was such a shock to find out that she was sick and to know that she was not going to be with us for much longer. She was so supportive of me when I started out at Ascendant. And so to finally be at a point where we're getting closer to breaking ground on a project that's going to serve seniors in the neighborhood, bring a brand new senior center to the neighborhood, really push the boundaries of sustainability and resiliency. And we think, we're biased, but we think is a really beautiful addition to the neighborhood and the skyline. And even more so once we get the public art process off the ground. So just want to thank you all very much for giving us the time to come and take so many of your committee meetings to talk about this project, but it's always our process to come early and often because the projects only get better the more we talk about them. So that hopefully when we get here to ULURP, it's something that people want to see and approve. So thank you, and looking forward to seeing you all as the process plays out over the next 2 months. And any other questions? Obviously, we'll take everything back that we heard and all the questions and ones where we have to do further work or research and get back to you with written responses and anything else that anyone has. Obviously, we talked to Angel a lot, so just let us know. We're happy to follow up.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Or anything. And see you at full board.
Just to speak the process for the committee. So next, this team will present at full board. There'll be an opportunity for public session. So let the district know. It's not specific just to new members, but notify other members, notify the district that this project will be up for public session next for this month. That being said, to committee members, you asked questions today. I expect them written to me before full board. So that way we can request them in writing from HPD. If you do not write it, I will take your question as just a point of information for education. If you do write it, then it's an RFI, a request for information from the development team as to what this particular question or concern or issue is. So then that way we're proactive with the constituents in the district. There's always an interest when you look projects go up. I don't think this will be any different from that. So the more you engage, the easier it is to be transparent to our fellow constituents. So that's pretty much the spiel for that. If there's any questions on process, you can ask. If not, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda.
Sounds good.
Excellent, thank you. So our next item on our agenda, item B, committee review of the fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget documents and presentation of comments to be submitted to the SDN committee for inclusion in the board's written response to the mayor. That's what this yeah. All right, so that's what this document is. We put in requests, budget and capital requests to the various agencies within the district. As you'll see, if you're very interested, I implore you to sit in the district needs committee. And I say that not only as chair of land use, but as the previous chair of the district needs committee, because a lot of the arguments, like even the topics of discussion that we're having today, are because we're being reactive, right? The SDN process allows proactivity for community members to request for funding, right, money to service your district, right? I need not say this process gets, as was so ignored prior to my involvement in the board, and we went as far as putting it in our bylaws to create a committee, so needless to say, I'm in full support of it. I went through the request. I'm pretty certain some of you are new, some of you are old. Those of you who are old, you know, I already expected a response to you in writing before this meeting. To date, I've gotten no response. So as far as I'm concerned, we're gonna look at this. We can opine, but it is not for us to take a necessary, we could take a written position, should you decide, but I will direct you to write it before we leave here tonight, right? So I'm not saying that in any other sense than us being practical, because sometimes we get hopeful for the SCN process. I know I was big on doing that when I was working with the SCN process. And the reality is the agencies can do so much, right? Because the funding is allocated to them. They go through an entire auditing process, and believe it or not, most of the time they're in agreement with us. It's just another level of discussion happening. So just to give you one more piece. The mayor's budget is gonna, now this is an argument, this was the process that came out of the district needs budget by the agency. Now, as we speak, you have city council versus the mayor. That's as simple as I'm gonna say it. So city council is gonna say what they think needs to be in it, what should it be in it. They propose that to the mayor, then the mayor will come up with his budget, which we won't get until you go into recession in June and July. And then those of us who still work over the summer and don't get the recession, we end up coming to district consultations end of July, August to talk to these agencies. I give you that whole process. So you do not feel that we need to hold the meeting hostage tonight to have this continued conversation with the agencies. One of them, which is right in your face, right? I can tell you in other community boards, HVD don't grow. Right, they come here because we advocate and request it. Thank you that HVD does, but just like any other organization, they work 9 to 5 and they're here at 8 o'clock at night, right? So it shows you their commitment to the district. So with that said, I'll turn it over to our district needs chair, who happens to be on our committee, but prior to that, Angel.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
So, yeah, we're gonna talk about all this budget nonsense, but I asked Melissa. If she could weigh in, or weigh in to add a little color to some of the responses we got from HPD. In fairness, I just asked her. So if she doesn't know, then, don't jump on Melissa. Before, I'll hand over to Melissa, Controller. In terms of the responses that we've gotten to our budget requests this year, those of you that have reviewed them, the responses do look different. DCP and OMB manage this process, and honestly, DCP has done a very good job of trying to make the process a little easier for us, to help us get better responses. OMB is not doing as well. I told them as much. But some of the responses you see here, it will look a little different than before. So for example, the very first one, they say agency supports and can accommodate the remove request. A lot of community boards have been getting triggered by the remove requests. Just ignore it. Focus on the explanation part. That's where it's clearly different than before. We never got anything, explanation, or some, cockamamie, call your council member stuff. And I'm not saying that to say that the answers are perfect, but they, you can tell they bothered to spend a couple of seconds giving us some color, some explanation that is useful, right? As far as I'm concerned, that means something. And I think that, community board should be, appreciative of that. I want to call with VCP and a bunch of other DMs today. They were furious about the remove request. I'm like, I don't worry about it. Don't get triggered. So I'm gonna want to let these guys go, like you said, but we're gonna, ask Melissa if she could add some color since she's, the head of planning. And if not, then okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for.
So I'm sorry, and I circled one that doesn't apply to you. So on page 1, both of those, on page 2, just number 5. Okay, that's it. That's all it applies.
Okay. Yeah. So I did just get this. Thanks for letting me know. But it was really interesting, and sorry if you saw me ferociously like on my phone a little bit earlier, it was because of this actually, and then I was trying to figure out that big question, but I couldn't quite get the right answer from DCP yet, but.
Thank you. They
They are also working overtime for you all because they do manage this, and they were also responding to my questions about the earlier project. So we'll shout out to that. So. Yes, so also just to explain a little bit about the process, you know, we take this into consideration. It is managed by DCP and OMB, but we do get the specific agency requests. And now we provide responses. And I would also say that, you know, all the community boards put out like a report, right? And just, so you know, because I think this has been asked a couple different times at previous meetings throughout the years. My team specifically actually does read those things, so when we have projects that are coming to us, it is part of the many different forms of feedback that we take into consideration when we're thinking about programming or like on public site designation, of a specific team, specific project. And, you know, we try to make sure that the work that we're doing are in line with the statement of needs over the past 5 years or so. No, we read them, we do read them,
I mean, I could just to jump in, I mean, I was chair of SDN, and HPD was the most valuable responder, so today,
Yeah.
I looked at this
yeah,
before I came here, and this is way different than what was done in the past,
It is.
specifically to land use and HPD, so I will give credit where it's due.
so I've looked at some of the explanations, and just so you know, it wasn't me who wrote these explanations, so these are kind of new to me, but it would have been my colleagues. The first one, provide more housing for special needs households such as formerly homeless, and there's an explanation below it, expanding upon it. And we said we can support the request and accommodate the request, you know, through our current term sheets and the work we do. This is kind of bread and butter of what we do, and we will continue to do it. You know, when asked or when possible, there are different programs to do supportive housing. Now, with local law 15, we're incorporating more formally homeless households, which you see are at the, you know, underwritten at 27% in my rent. Those folks come in with vouchers. So, you know, they're usually paying like 30% of their income, they have services. So that's an expanded program.
And that's a great point, Melissa. I think, and I remember when we drafted this
Yeah.
request, it was specific to those that have special needs, mental
Yeah.
health challenges,
Okay.
right? And HPD did not answer that here.
Okay.
So I already flagged it that the
Yeah.
board has to rewrite and emphasize, not necessarily for this process, but maybe for district consultation, unless you're gonna tell me, just like how there's the, LGBTQ supportive housing, the formerly supportive housing. Is there housing, for example, given for adults or children with autism?
Yeah.
Something
And
to that. degree.
we have our entire special needs housing unit. So that's a unit that has the SARA program, so the senior housing, the special or the supportive housing, am I missing one under that? It just says 2 branches. And that can cover a lot of range of different populations. And then we also just have our regular term sheets through which we finance projects, and on our Ella term sheets, you can do up to 30% supportive housing on those, and it just really is the developer coming in and you know, saying they want to do that and us working together to find financing to do that. So it is something we can do. And then again, with formerly homeless set aside, it is required by local law and projects of a certain size that we have to have that 15% formerly homeless set aside, and it comes with you know, a fully funded amount of light touch services. And then they mentioned the open door program, because why not throw that in there? We do have an open door program that is meant for for home ownership. So usually co-ops are built through that program.
Just added one more, it's the 1515 rental assistance program, that's the like was still talking about the 30, potentially sometimes when it's a 30% supportive housing in some of the projects, that's sometimes covered by the rental assistance 1515 program, and that's for specific. There's like specific eligibility, it's a long list, but it covers some of these folks who might be living with mental illness or, other, mental health issues, disabling medical conditions, HIV/AIDS. So there's a long list of eligible folks who this rental assistance would apply to. So that's the sort of program that is supplemental, I would say, to the standard term sheets.
I think that was like the hardest one to answer, or the longest answer that I'm gonna be giving tonight, because that was, that one seems like an umbrella statement, so there's a lot of things that we do,
And I was pretty certain that we needed technical reference
yeah,
to drive what we're trying
Yeah.
to convey, which
Yeah.
is, yeah, we understand what we set aside and for, but it was, I just know because I was a part of the process when I was drafting this, and it was specific to those that,
yeah.
whatever is the politically correct term today to deal with those that have challenges that are beyond their means.
Yeah, and I also see this, I see this for, homeless veterans, we do have, a project that will be HPD finance that will, cater to those individuals, So yeah, so this also means through our capital budget, we're able to do this, and we got a lot more money, well, not a lot more money, but with through City of Yes, we got some extra funds. So that's another underlying factor in all these answers.
Yeah, I saw that for number 2, and the HPD even requested for those of us that are, I know that some of you are real strong on vacancies and great. HPD just asked you, give me a list,
Yeah,
right? So we could do some homework on our end with housing
yeah,
and get HPD that list, and hopefully some of you have already reached out, I'm being sarcastic. That have reached out to landowners that might be interested, you'd be shocked.
also, if there's, I see some like, or I don't see them here, but like some specific programs that we have that you could also always advocate for that aren't just like our capital expenditures for building housing, but like our partners in preservation programs, our homeowners help desk. There was one on this that I'm not thinking of, home first, things like that. If you think it would benefit your community and there are very specific things that you want funding to go towards, that money that I mentioned through yes, that we got a little extra funding for it, it's going to, that's helping us with those programs. Number 2, I see agency supports but cannot accommodate resubmit request, I think. And I'll have,
Number 4 and 5.
what about
That
number
page.
5? You want me to go back?
Page 2, I'm saying, your item.
Oh, no, I'm saying item number 2.
Yeah, because number 3 is department of sanitation.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying there's an item number 2 that April started for. So this one's a little bit difficult, and what I think they're getting at here is like, these are kind of state level, policies that we were definitely, talking about, but, as far as funding, these are kind of as of right things that we can't really control, especially for funding, but, certainly if you hear somebody who's ever interested in doing affordable housing on their own site, you can always reach out to us.
So on this one, I do have a
Yeah.
question. So this one in part, where, on the piece on the underutilized residential buildings with vacant properties, we have a ton of vacant buildings in our district. And, I'm not expecting to have the answer tonight, but, a yes or no, I guess, would suffice, for me this evening. If I said, if we provided tomorrow a list of, here's 50 empty buildings in this district that have been empty since, I had a lot more. And people need to live somewhere, right? Is the city, is HPD tasked with proactively approaching property owners for, trying to get these buildings or these sites back, these buildings back online or these sites redeveloped for future residential, right? Like, you know, every elected official is always talking about, you know, building, yes. Okay, this community board, we've been yeses the whole time I've been working, here, and that's good because the need is high. But there's certain spots that are not, none of these projects are easy, obviously. But, so like, you know, Chris's projects are easy because it's a vacant lot, I mean, you build on it. These are empty buildings that they're privately owned, no city participation whatsoever. So that, yeah, so it's a long question, like, is this something the city and your agency is actively tasked with seeking out, you know, engagement with property owners to see if we can get these buildings back online or these sites redeveloped for housing?
Right, especially those massively underutilized projects, right? And buildings that are just sitting there year in and year out, right? Hey, falling apart, public safety.
I think an answer from.
A team called our zombie homes team, and they go out in the field, they're called zombie homes because they're abandoned residential buildings. I don't know exactly what the process is or how they determine what buildings they're targeting, but I know that we do have a gentleman who will go out, walk around neighborhoods and really like collect information about which homes we target, and then we'll figure out how to facilitate that.
Those zombie homes include residential buildings?
They're all residential, yeah.
They're all residential, but like
Apartment.
apartment buildings, instead of a regular 1, 2, 3 family home, like the buildings here that Angel's speaking to, right? Cause what qualifies a zombie home? Right? If it's small, out of, where Manhattan, right, out of borough homes, and necessarily 1 to 3 families, then it wouldn't apply. If some of these residential buildings can qualify for what the designation of the zombie home is, then right, maybe we can talk to you guys, give you a list of those properties, and then you can get them designated as such, and then action can be taken.
Yeah.
That's
a good question. I'm, again, I know the program, but you kind of hit on something where it's been outer borough.
Right.
So we can look at what the criteria is, maybe why it hasn't been.
Right, right, cause these buildings, sometimes, oftentimes, Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the property owners utilize the commercial space, right? And then have this completely decaying, desolate amounts of units that can be made available to be utilized. You know, so if that decay, falling apart, causing public safety issues, right? Maybe they qualify as a zombie. I don't know what the requirements are. Do you know what some of the requirements are for what qualifies as zombies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are very specific.
Right.
Things,
Right.
so yeah, we can follow up on that.
To be continued, thank you.
Maybe it's.
Sorry, may I just add a comment on, in that frame?
Thanks for coming in, man. That's it, right? Oh, that's it.
I was kind of hoping to get them through these and then have the committee.
Yeah, 2 more.
Absolutely.
Or maybe.
Sorry, may I add just a point of clarification on the previous conversation?
I think we're gonna do questions at the end, Jessica.
It's not a question, it's a point of clarification.
Yes, Jessica.
Thank you. The buildings that Angel and Vinny are talking about in our district, part of the reason why they have been left to deteriorate is because they contain stabilized, rent stabilized units, which I think is part of the prohibitive conditions that further result in landlords not maintaining the buildings because of the nature of the containing formerly stabilized units. So that I know, and Vinny, to your point, they're whole blocks, right? They're big buildings clustered together and exist kind of in concentrated areas. So just.
If they're rent stabilized and they are decaying, then they should be reporting to 311. So that we can come out and issue violations.
Some fixed stuff.
And I know that maybe if there are tenants in there, sometimes there might be situations where it's really difficult for the tenants to report.
There aren't, these buildings are.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been empty for decades in some cases. So there, nobody's gonna call 311, which puts us in the zombie classification, perhaps.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 5, Angel City. That didn't land.
Or not
That's
that.
fair.
I was like, maybe.
We got them off for you, surprise.
Number 5, provide work, housing for seniors, so, kind of in line with my answer for number 1, we did just bring a big senior project to you tonight. Yay, and it's actually, so again, that's a capital funding thing, you know. People bring us proposals and it works out and they have their underwriting, their financing and, you know, their designs kind of together, or if there's a, publicly owned site and, you know, we can designate a senior housing project there, so we come forward with that proposal and it's the winning proposal, you know, it's a matter of just our capital budget and we will continue to do that. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, none of our units preclude seniors. That's the one advantage for seniors is that
You can get it on.
yeah, but certainly we understand that, understand this request.
Melissa, do you know how many senior percentage you have in the other units? In other words, a demographic of it.
I have no clue,
Can we let her finish the presentation before we ask questions?
Sorry.
Third time.
So yeah, we can certainly accommodate this request. Keep requesting more capital funding for us.
And keep it on there.
And yeah, and this specific populations like seniors see it or understood.
There you done, right, Melissa? Yes. Thank you. Vinny, your question now about the population of other districts versus this district?
Correct. We also know the capital, thank you, Chair. We also know the capital utilization versus one district versus the other. So
Or
no,
just seniors?
no, for District CB11,
Oh,
how much was exhausted here versus other districts?
I don't know money wise, but I know that this is one of the top producing community boards in the city. In terms of affordable units and rent stabilized units. It might be, is it number 1? Is it number 2 after number 2? This is definitely one of the top. Maybe Oviedo, I guess you said the Bronx was number 1. Maybe we should be asking her.
George just did a presentation.
But I would just say that that's probably a difficult question to answer also because some projects like the Beacon, which we just presented, are gonna be much more expensive if you're doing a whole community facility renovation, et cetera, than other projects, you know, so it, I don't know if we have that information broken down, it would just be also difficult, so.
You have a nice matrix there.
Yeah, but I would say in terms of production overall, yeah, this is definitely one of the top.
Thank you, thank you.
Beverly.
Yes, Melissa, in regards to the capital budget, when you say, you're asking for more capital money, when you have these type of projects, are any private funding being, given to make these buildings come in fruition? Or is it all coming from capital money?
So our projects seek, like lending from,
Like the one we did, the presentation we just had.
yeah, they'll get, private financing for the construction loan, I believe. And so, yes, there is an element of that, that's why we have to, create projects that are feasible enough and have the right terms in order to get those loans from private lenders. They have their own requirements. So.
Correct. But mostly because it's a private developer or private ownership.
No, it's just the way that the financing works. We're getting lending from private institutions and, to help out the overall, like budget. So the city will bring in its public dollars to lend and we're able to utilize this, public dollars to leverage underwriting that then private lenders will also put some money into, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm sorry, Beverly, is the question relevant to our needs, or is it just informative to HPD's financing process?
That's actually one of them, we got in vacant units, when you've been speaking of. In regards to vacant, most of them then, they asked about was private owned vacant units. What are you doing about vacant units that the city owns, that HPD owns? Because there's a lot of buildings that the city owns, and they are vacant, and some of them are run by other organizations and they can't rent.
I would say the mayoral's executive order, I don't know if you've seen that recently, where we do have to look at the entire portfolio of publicly owned sites and publicly owned buildings is starting to address that, and we're thinking of how we might work with other agencies, or whether they be city agencies or maybe even like state and federal agencies to find more opportunities for housing sites. Actually, East Harlem really paved the way with this, with the 2 sites that we brought to you, with the NYPD lot and the HRA Multi-Service Center. So we actually now have an executive order to be thinking about other sites that we could be doing some things with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like that in the notes.
So if you think of it, let us know.
I'm always thinking of it.
Yeah,
Always
so
ask for it.
Can't do everything, but send it.
Oh, no. Don't let me try.
And we actually do have somebody dedicated now specifically to intake of proposals. That's kind of a newer thing. To have like a specific finance director who does that. So that's kind of cool. So.
So we got homework for our next resubmission, which the board can, we can extrapolate this information and make some recommendations with these public properties. Elliot.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the time. I'm not gonna take too much time, but I just want to say thank you for staying and talking through some of these requests. I think specifically your agency notes, I think on every request supports and can accommodate. So I think that, we probably have a little bit less to talk about than we do with some of the other city agencies. But I wanted to remind this committee and the board, I will send out, I made comments at executive and at full board. But we are working on the statement for this preliminary budget. It will be completed next Wednesday. I hear that there's no need to bring up any specific topics from this committee. But if you sit on any other committees, I just need that information in advance as soon as possible. But our strategy for this effort, as you know, we are in writing the ship mode. And we will be for this entire year, and I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. So we're gonna, I think, hope to familiarize everyone who is, I think, approached the budget process with a little bit of like a tentative, fear, if you will, to feel more comfortable about it. And in doing that, we're also hoping that it will inform the work of our board moving forward. So the approach for the statement this year is the requests that specifically, the explanations within our requests, we're taking the, flavor of that explanation and building it into like a comprehensive response to each city agency. If you guys are hearing from other committees or anything that is, a goal that is not reflected in a request or a budget request, that's probably not going to make it into the statement. That's something we need to think about over time. So how do we take our goals as committees, make them into actions, committee actions, whether that's letters or resolutions, and then those actions inform these requests, and therefore we're kind of doing this like churning, right? So that's what the statement's going to be this year, and we're going to continue to improve as we.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns relevant to the request or the responses to the request? All right, seeing no hands, we're moving on. Thank you, HPD, for presenting.
Thank you, guys. Get home safe.
Good night, as you have.
Stay away from the vacant buildings.
That's an example of the block you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. We got that.
We'll forward information. And it's definitely
Extra homework every time you come up here.
housing conversation. Land use should definitely support housing on that effort. Any old business? New business?
It's regarding 180 West 125th Street. I noticed on their application, they have, a MTA lot also included into their application, and I wanted to, go back.
What was the address?
180 West,
I mean,
125th.
east, 125th Street.
Yeah, that's-
180
I believe
east?
that's under the Second Avenue Task Force, but I'll definitely have the chair reach out to you
Yeah,
for that.
they- Yeah.
Next,
Okay.
that's not relevant to land use. Is it relevant to land use?
I don't remember what it is, what we're talking about.
From a land use presentation that they came here. to do.
I think if I remember that there was like a property or a lot incorrectly noted.
Yeah, and their application.
And Beverly caught it, she reads it. Awesome.
Great job, Nadia. Hopefully it got ratified by full board before it got presented to the floor. Anyone else?
New business.
Excellent, meeting adjourned.
Hold on, I have to do roll call, sorry. Rightfully.
No problem, sir.
Rehab,
Here.
Kenneth Scruggs. Here. Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Anise Foster Hernandez,
Present.
Pascal Hanu, present, Jessica Jones. Oh. That's a show. No.
It's still. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Joe Jones.
I like that.
Here.
Nelson Rama.
Gotta have a little fun.
Present. Present.
I can't take
I
it.
got you, Nelson.
Okay.
Billy Torres.
Presente.
Silvia Villanueva, and Vivi Vazquez.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
present.
Meeting adjourned 8:20.
Thank you, everyone. Get home safe.